Tov, Shavua Tov. So let's jump right in. Perek Chet, the 8th chapter of Sefer Daniel. Here too, he's dreaming. Okay, this is the third, we're starting out on the third year of Belshazzar. Last week, we ended with Perek Zayin, which was a earlier dream that he dreamt during the first year of Belshazzar. I'm reminding you, Belshazzar was one of the last kings of Bavel. So these dreams are basically towards the end of the reign of the Babylonians. Last week we discussed his dream of the 4 different animals. The last animal was fiercest, was the most fierce of all, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes out and he basically brings Am Yisrael, he brings a full redemption to the world. This chapter is a little bit difficult to understand. We'll do our best to understand it, but it's in Hebrew, so it's a little bit easier for us anyway because it's in Hebrew. But just beware, just because it's in Hebrew doesn't mean that we're going to understand it more. Maybe we understand the words, what we're reading, but it's difficult. So let's jump right in. So Shavua Tov again to all those who just joined. Perek Chet, Pasuk Aleph. Okay, Pasuk Aleph of chapter 8, Sefer Daniel. Bishnat Shalosh lemalchut Belshazzar hamelech Chazon nira elai ani Daniel acharei hanira elai batechila. So this is the third year of Belshazzar. He's the last king of Bavel, as we mentioned, and he saw a second vision. Here, the word chazon doesn't mean an idea going forward, rather just a vision, something that he saw in his mind, in his dream. And here goes. This is what he sees. Pasuk Bet. Vayir'eh bechazon, vahi bir'oti, ve'ani beshushan, Shushan abira. Asher be'ilam ha-medina, va'areh b'chazon, va'ani hayiti al uval ulai. So Daniel is telling us that he sees this vision, and he suddenly finds himself in his dream. He finds himself in some type of walled city, Shushan abira. He knows what Shushan abira is. He lives in Bavel, but obviously he doesn't live in Shushan abira. He's living in the capital at that time, was Bavel. It might have not been Shushan. We know Shushan as a famous city because of Achashverosh. But Achashverosh was Melech Paras Umadai. We're talking about generations beforehand when we're talking about the Bavlim, the Babylonians. So Daniel is living in another city. So in his dream, he sees himself, in another city, Shushan abira. And he's on the bank of a river, right, in the province of Elam, and he's standing by a river called Uval Ulai. Now, again, I'm translating it as a river, but then again, it's not really positive that we're talking about a river. Okay, other Parshanim, some say that it's a river, some say it's something else. Again, there's a lot of, as we say in Hebrew, milim yechidayot. We have in this perek many words that don't appear anywhere else in the Tanakh, so we have nothing we can really learn from. So it's just guesswork what we're talking about. But most Parshanim assume that it's a river called Ulai River. Uval River Ulai. And this is what he sees in his dream. Now, mind you, he's relaying to us his dreams. And as you know, as we've seen in the previous perek, it's not very, very clear to us. Dreams in general are not very clear, let alone when you try to relay it to someone else. I don't know if you remember when you were children and you tried to relay your dream to your parent and they say, what are you talking about? I can't understand the word slow down, right? But in our mind, it's very clear. So in Daniel's mind, it's clear. We're going to try to decipher it. So this is what he sees. Va'isa enai, pasuk gimel, va'isa enai va'ir'eh, vehinei ayil echad, omed lifnei ha'uval, velo karnaim. והקרניים גבוהות, ואחת גבוהה מן השנית, והגבוהה עולה באחרונה. Okay, so he sees in the bedside of this river, he sees a ram, and this ram had 2 long horns, one of which was longer and maybe even newer than the other. I'm going to share my screen with you just so we can visualize a little bit what we're seeing. Before I do that, let me just continue one or two psukim. So he sees a ram, and the ram has two horns. One horn is higher than the other. So think of a lopsided ram, if you will, right? Where one horn is a little higher than the other. Sug Daled. All of a sudden he sees Ra'it et ha'ayil menageach yama vetzafona vanegba vekol chayot lo ya'amdu lefanav ve'en matzil miyado ve'asa kirtzono vehigdil. So in his dream, he watches this ram, a little bit of a lopsided ram, as I mentioned. And this ram is I guess, butting with his horns to three different kivunim, west, north, and south. Three directions, west, north, and south. Now, in this dream, he sees animals trying to go up against this ram, but this ram is trampling on every single animal. No animal could stop him or escape his power. Ve'en matzil miyado ve'asa kirtzono vehigdil. So he did as he pleased, and he grew arrogant because he was very powerful. You know, we usually think of the lion as the king of the animals. But in Daniel's dream, he's not dreaming of lions, he's dreaming of a ram with horns, lopsided horns, that is really butting and just, killing anything in his path. And he becomes more arrogant, this mighty ram. Now I was thinking to myself, why is it that he's thinking about rams and not lions? So the only thing I could think of is because he likes lions. To him, lions are peaceful animals. Think about it, because if you recall, when he was thrown into the pit, into the lion's den, he became very friendly with lions. Lions didn't do any harm to him. So as far as he's concerned, lions are not dangerous, right? Lions are peaceful creatures. So he's not dreaming about the king of the forest, the king of the animals, the lion. Instead, he's dreaming about a ram. Now, that's how people dream. When we dream, our mind plays tricks on us all the time. But really, today, we dream and we try to decipher things that we see on an everyday life. Every minute of the day, we see things, we record things. Our minds are extremely, they're pretty amazing. So in his mind, he doesn't want to think of a lion devouring and eating through because he loves lions. So instead, he sees a ram. So I can understand why he sees a ram with these lopsided horns. That's what he sees. But he says in Pasuk Hey, all of a sudden, Ve'ani hayiti mevin, right? All of a sudden, I'm like wondering, all of a sudden in this dream, he's like pondering over things. Because don't forget, this is a dream. And in dreams, everything works. So he sees himself watching this ram, devouring everything in its path. And then all of a sudden, he sees himself thinking. He sees himself thinking, wondering about something. And then all of a sudden, he sees a goat. A goat comes out, rushing out of the west, moving so fast. בא מן המערב על פני כל הארץ, ואין נוגע בארץ. And this goat was a super goat, because it was going so fast, its legs didn't seem to be actually traveling on the ground. It was kind of floating. Kind of like, if anybody of you have ever seen a movie called Back to the Future, anybody seen the movie called Back to the Future? It's a famous movie. And in this Back to the Future movie, one of the stars played by an actor called Michael J. Fox, takes a skateboard and he kind of like runs on the pavement with his skateboard. Everyone knows what a skateboard is, right? It's like it's a piece of it's a kind of like a keresh, right? And it has like wheels on it. But in one of the movies is the future. He's on a skateboard, but it's hovering. There's no wheels. It's like hovering on the ground. So you don't see it actually on the ground, but it's hovering on top. So that's what he's seeing. He's seeing this goat come out of nowhere from the west, traveling at the speed of light, and it seems like its legs are not actually touching the ground. It's kind of hovering on top of the ground. So that's very futuristic. Mamash. And he says, Ve'en nogea ba'aretz, right? Ve'atzafir keren chazut ben einav. So I'm just translating by taking different parshanim and pshat. What does tzafir mean? It basically means we're talking about a goat that was rushing out of the west, feet wasn't touching the ground, and this goat, tzafir goat, had one prominent horn between its eyes. It had the regular horns and one very long, prominent horn in between the eyes. That's what he's dreaming about. So now I'm going to share my screen, just so you can understand what I think we're talking about, okay? So you see the ram and the goat? Okay, so we're on the same page. Everyone sees the ram on the left and the goat on the right. I tried to find a picture, a lopsided goat, because that's what we're discussing here. We're talking about a lopsided goat. So in the picture, it looks like one of the horns is higher than the other, but that's because it's visual, it's on its side. But think of it that way. It's a lopsided ram, because that's what he's dreaming about. And the goat, okay, so the goat, I couldn't find one that has a horn, so I had to create one. Okay, so I'll show you in a minute how I created a horn in between the goat. But before I go to the next one, I'll just read the next pasuk, and then I'll show you the extra horn that I built for our dear cute goat on the right. We'll see in a minute it's not a very cute goat, okay, but it seems to be cute to me. Okay, so he sees this goat hovering, rushing. What is this goat doing? Okay, so it's rushing from the west, coming with this one horn, which I'll try to draw in a second. And all of a sudden, there's a fight between the goat and the ram. Okay? Pasuk Vav. Vayavo ad ha'ayil. So this goat comes towards the ram, which I had seen standing beside the river, and rushed at him with all of its force. Asher ra'iti omed lifnei ha'uval, vayarotz elav bechamat kocho. Okay, so I drew a little an extra horn, as you can see. That's the goat. Now, later on, we're going to see that this goat represents Greece, Yavan. And the ram, as we're going to see in a minute later on in the parak, I'm just bringing it forward now so you can understand what's going on here. The ram represents Paras Umadai. The reason why it's a lopsided ram, and why one, here, let me just get my laser, and why supposedly this, one of the horns is higher than the other, is because this horn represents Paras, and this one represents Madai. And as you know, Paras was stronger than Madai. Even though they were a joint empire, at the end of the day, Paras overcame and beat and conquered Madai. That's the reason why Daniel is dreaming about two horns, which is Paras and Madai, and Persia is a little higher because it's stronger. And according to the Psukim later on, we'll see that the horn here represents Yavan. It's a cute horn. But as we're going to see now, as we just read in Pasuk Vav, the goat runs and tries to beat out the ram. Okay, so as I did about Persia, and then all of a sudden, the goat tries to ram the ram, tries to butt the ram and kill the ram. That's what we just heard, right? Vayarotz elav bechamat kocho, Pasuk Vav, right? He rushed at him with all his force. And this is what he sees. He sees basically a fight, dual fight between these two animals. And he shares what he sees, Pasuk Zayin, Uri'itiv magia etzel ha'ayil. So I now see, I watched this goat attack the ram. Vaitmarmar elav vayach et ha'ayil. Vayishaber et shtei kiranav ולא היה כוח בעיל לעמוד לפניו. So this goat, tried to pick a goat that looks angry. This goat was so angry, right? Vaitmarmar, it was so angry that it smashed into the ram and broke his horns completely. And the ram had absolutely no strength to resist, right? En koach ba'ai la'amod lefanav. What happens to this ram? Vayashlicheu arza, vayirmesehu, velo haya matzil la'ayil miyado. So the ram had no strength to resist, and it was thrown to the ground, and the goat trampled on it, and there was no one who could save him. Okay, so later on we'll see that it's basically the Greeks defeating the older empire, the Persian and Madai, Parasu Madai. And this really goes hand in hand with the previous dreams, both the dream that Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel, had back in Perek Bet, right, when it had that very tall statue divided into four, and it goes hand in hand also with Daniel's previous dream that we saw in Perek Zayin, when he dreamt about the four animals, right? Animal 1, which was Bavel, animal 2. Although, as I mentioned, those animals can be seen very easily talking about not these empires, but rather also the Christian, the Muslims, etc. But here it's very clear. In this perek, as we're going to see later on, when we get to Pasuk Kaf Gimel, Kaf Dalet, and Kaf Hey, we'll see very clearly that we're talking about Yavan and Parasu Madai. So Daniel really is seeing the future here, a future that is close. He's at the verge of the end of Bavel. He's dreaming about Paras Umadai that will take over Bavel, and then he dreams further, a Mamasha Nevuah, he dreams that the Greeks will defeat the Parsim. That's what he sees. So I think for the first time we're really seeing an actual vision, a dream that could happen in his lifetime, or close to his lifetime, or near his lifetime. Okay, so we see that that's what happens. The angry goat rams into the undefeatable Persian ram, but it has become defeatable, and the goat wins. And then something very interesting happens to this goat. Utzfir ha'izim higdil ad me'od, וכעצמו נשברה הקרן הגדולה, ותעלנה חזות ארבע תחתיה לארבע רוחות השמיים. So this goat grew more and more arrogant, because if we said if the ram was undefeatable and the ram grew arrogant and the goat comes and defeats the ram, sounds like Chad Gadya, doesn't it? So the goat defeats the ram, the goat becomes the king of the animals, king of the world, if it's really representing the Yavan, the Yavanim, the Greeks. But at the height of his power, right? Higdil ad me'od, ucheatzmo, from otzma, when it reached the heights of its power, otzma, what happened? Nishbera hakeren hagedola, its horn was broken. As we're going to see in a minute, we're talking about Alexander the Great. Why? Let's read the pasuk. Let's read the end of the pasuk. As he became the most powerful ruler in the region, in the entire world, basically, his horn breaks, and in its place, as we read in pasuk Chet, v'ta'alena chazut arba tachtea le'arba ruchot hashamayim. At the height of his power, in its place, four prominent horns came up, each pointing in a different direction. There you go. So he had this, all of a sudden, whoops, the horn breaks. What does it mean the horn breaks? So if you could see on the left, the doctors are performing surgery on him. No one really knows, but Alexander Hagadol at the height of his power, after 13 years, he became sick. Something happened to him. He was never defeated. He wasn't defeated. He was the undefeated ruler. He never lost. He just lost to himself. He became sick. Doctors couldn't save him. Misken, right? Maybe he had some kind of virus, or maybe a mosquito bit him or something. I don't know. No one knows. It's really it's something that the researchers and the historians, they really can't figure out. But at the height of his power, mamash, only 13 years later, when he was conquering the entire world, no one was able to defeat him. But he gets sick by himself, and he dies. And in his place, as the pasuk says, 4 horns are grown on this head of the goat. Meaning, as we can see here, there were 4 generals that took the place of Alexander Hagadol, Alexander the Great. Just to give you some stories, according to the Gemara, he was the only king who bowed down to God, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So even though he was a great king, as far as being the strongest ruler ever, never lost, he had the anava, he had some type of humility before God. According to the Gemara, he met Shimon ben Shattach as well, and some other chachamim. Either way, this is what Daniel is seeing in his dream. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? This is weird, but this is what he's seeing in his dream. He's seeing the goat that used to be Alexander Mokdon. He dies, symbolized by the horn that broke, and in its place, 4 horns were in its place, as we can read in the next pasuk. But at the end of Chet, Vatarena chazut arba tachtea le'arba ruchot hashamayim, pasuk Tet, and then out of one of them, umin ha'achat mehem, out of one of these 4, we're going to see soon. I chose this one. Out of one of the 4, al achat yatsa keren achat matzeira vatigdal yeter el hanegev ve'el hamizrach ve'el hatzevi. So out of one of these 4, we're going to see what it is in a minute. There's a little horn, a little cute horn that grows out of one of these horns, and the power of this horn that grows out of one of these horns extended towards the south, the east, and towards what it says here, El HaMizrach Ve'el HaTzevi, which I think is talking about Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so let me just share my, there you go. Okay, so these 4 generals, according to the historical event, I just went online, you can go check it out. There's 4 generals that took over for Alexander the Great. Cassander, he took over the west of the Greek Empire. Lysimachus, if that's even how you pronounce it. Seleucus, which we all know, the Seleukim. We're going to, as you see, this horn is pointing towards the Seleukim for a reason. And Talmai. Talmai we also meet later on. Beit Talmai, he's mentioned many places, and he took over the Egyptian and the southern part of Eretz Yisrael. It said there's Palestine, whatever, I don't want to change it. So this is what he sees. He sees this goat that defeated the ram, and that goat that had that one horn in the middle was more powerful than any other ruler ever, conquered more territory than anyone else, but he died from some type of sickness all of a sudden. No one really understands what that was, but he dies. And instead, we have these 4 horns that take over, these 4 generals. But out of the Seleuki general, from here, there's another branch that grows mightier than all 4 and very, very, very strong. We'll see who he is in a moment. Okay, let's go back to Pasuk Yud. So this horn, this extra horn here that grew out of the Seleukim from this general, maybe it was a son, or maybe it was maybe took over, maybe he conquered this general. Vatigdal ad tzva hashamayim, and this horn was so strong, so tall and mighty that in his dream, Daniel is saying to himself that it grew all the way up to the Shamayim, all the way up to the heavens. I mean, that's what he's dreaming about, which basically symbolizes might. And everyone feared this specific ruler. Vatapel arza min hatzava umin hakochavim vatirmesem. So this horn grew so strong enough to attack the armies of heaven, the stars themselves, and it even succeeded in throwing some of them onto the ground and trampling on them. So if somebody told you this dream, what is this extra horn? All we know that it's a mighty horn, one that attacks the stars, attacks the heaven themselves. And then the pasuk Yud Aleph, is even harder to understand. Ve'ad sar hatzava higdil, umimenu huram hatamid, ve'ushlach mechon mikdasho. So the parshanim here, if I just take them all into account, and Dat Mikra and everyone else I can find and kind of put it together, basically, this horn not only threw some of the stars down in Daniel's dream, but it even defied the prince of the heavenly army. Obviously, we're talking about God here, right? And it succeeded in stopping the daily sacrifice, the Korban HaTamid, that ruined the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, ruined the Avodah in Beit HaMikdash. So he's dreaming about these animals, but all of a sudden what's creeping into his dream is Am Yisrael, some type of ruler that was so mighty and so fierce, so strong, that it attacked the heaven, attacked the stars and threw down the stars, attacked God himself. So tell me, who are we talking about? This is a prince, a king from Mamlechet Salukim, one of the 4 generals that took over for Alexander Agadol. Who do you think we're talking about? Anyone?
Antiochus.
Antiochus, exactly. He was the first king to go in and defile, ruin everything that we built in the Beit HaMikdash HaSheni. Exactly. Antiochus. So let's look at the map here. So we had Alexander Mokdon. He was the ruler of this entire area.
Who's having this dream? Belshazzar? Who's having this dream? Belshazzar.
Daniel. Daniel is having this dream.
Daniel's having
during the 3rd year of Belshazzar, which is 2 years after his dream from last Perek, when he dreamt about the 4 animals. Okay? So Daniel is having this dream, and he dreams of a ram with a lopsided horns, one higher than the other, which represented Paras Umadai. Paras was strong, and that's why the horn was a little bit lopsided. And then it was really ruining everything in its way, until the goat with the one horn came and ruined and killed the ram, and nobody can defeat this goat. This goat is basically in the dream. We'll see later. We think it's Alexander Mokdon, the Alexander the Great, who no one was able to defeat him. And the horn in the dream was broken, which basically represents his own demise. He got sick or something, but he was not defeated. And 4 generals, these generals took over for Alexander Mokdon. Because he died quickly, he didn't actually divide his empire into 4, but these generals took it upon themselves to divide his empire into 4. So we have Talmai and the Salukim, which have to do with the Jewish history. And then we have these guys up here, Cassander and Lysimachus, who's not really connected to our Jewish history, but these 2 are. And between these 2, the Seleucus general, I guess, had an offspring, had somebody in his kingdom who took over, represented by the very, very long a horn over here that Daniel is dreaming about, and that's Antiochus, because what he did, basically, he came and he conquered Eretz Israel, and he basically threw down the Beit HaMikdash. He ruined it inside. He defiled it completely. He didn't ruin the structure. He left the structure as is, but he defiled everything inside, and that's terrible. That's why we have Hanukkah, because we overcame that. But what he did was the first king to really go against God, Lehachis, and that's why Daniel doesn't know this. He's not living during this period of time. He's living about 100 and something years, 152, if not 250 years before, maybe even more, 300 beforehand. And therefore, this mamash is a vision of a nevuah, right? A lot of biblical critics have basically said that the book of Daniel was the last book to be written, and it was written during the time of the Hashmonaim. Otherwise, how would he have known this, right? Because they can't stand the fact that there's actual nevuah, that an actual human being has the ability to see the future. That doesn't exist. Therefore, according to them, Sefer Daniel was written during the time of Beit Hashmonai. That's why he knew of this history. But as far as we're concerned, our emunah is that Daniel was born during the Churban, right before Churban Beit HaMikdash Harishon, because he was taken by Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, right? And he actually was the one who wrote the book. And therefore, we see it as a vision. And he actually saw this in his dream. So this long horn that grew out of one of those four, basically, as I have over here, Antiochus the fourth, which is Antiochus Epiphanes. And he came in and really, as Daniel says, he defied God himself, and he was able to throw down some of those kochavim, some of those stars, which basically signifies him throwing down the mizbeach, throwing down the menorah, and the Oronai, the whole. Well, there was no Oronai by that time, but he ruined the entire Kodesh HaKodashim. And Daniel just sees in his dream this mighty horn taking over and ruining and defeating God, or not defeating God, but going against God, ruining the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. Okay? That's what he sees in his dream. Pasuk Yud Bet. Okay, so that's the end of our, now that we see what he's talking about, I can finally see people. Go. Okay. Yofi. So, Pasuk Yud Bet. וצבא תינתן על התמיד בפשע, ותשלך אמת ארצה, ועשתה והצליחה. So he sees people sinning instead of offering the proper daily sacrifice. He sees people not doing the avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. He sees this mighty king Antiochus really ruining it for Am Yisrael. Possibly he's talking about the mityavnim, right? And this true religion, meaning dat, right? Ha'emet. Emet is the true religion. Arza. Ve'asta ve'hitzlicha. This religion was thrown to the ground, and this horn was successful in everything that it did. Mamash. So we see, in a way, he's really seeing the future. He's really seeing an entire future of these kings. And he sees Nebuchadnezzar. Well, that was in the previous dreams. He saw Paras Umadai also in the previous, and here he sees the extension of what's really happening, and he envisions what's going to happen to Am Yisrael. He sees the Beit HaMikdash being torn apart by this strong horn, which later on I already told you we're talking about Antiochus. Pasuk Yud Gimel 13. All of a sudden, in his dream, after he finishes seeing all of these sinners who no longer daven and offer sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash because there's no mizbeach, it was defiled, it was torn down. That's what he saw in his dream by that horn tearing down the kochavim, the stars, right? All of a sudden he hears Vayomer echad kadosh lepalmoni. All of a sudden he hears some kind of angel ask another angel. I mean, this is a dream, right? So all of a sudden his thought, he sees another vision in the middle of all this, and he sees one angel talking to another angel. Palmoni, right? Hamedaber, he hears this angel talking, and this angel is asking another angel, Ad matai hechazon hatamid vehapesha shomem, tet vekodesh vetzeva mirmas. So how long will these things that were seen in this vision continue? The sinning and the ruining of the Beit HaMikdash. How long is this going to happen? Meaning, he's basically hearing, or maybe this is his own thoughts, and it's projected by these malachim. How long is this Avel, this terrible period of history of shattering and taking away the Torah of Eretz Yisrael? How long is it going to be for? When will we find a redemption? Right? Ad matai hechazon hatamid ve'apesha shomem tet ve'kodesh ve'tzava mirmas. How long will this awful sin that replaces the avodah? He must have seen them do. He doesn't explain what they were doing, but they were sinning. Instead of sacrificing, instead of using the area of the Beit HaMikdash, the Azara area where the Beit HaMikdash, where the korbanot were sacrificed, instead of doing the Seder Avodah, they were doing something else. He doesn't tell us what they were doing, but in his mind, he sees them sinning. A lot of times in our minds, we don't really see clearly, but we know what we're seeing, even though we don't understand what we're seeing. He sees them sinning. And he asks, how long is it going to happen? And then the other angel answers the angel that asked the question, Vayomer elai, and then he turns to me, to Daniel. All of a sudden, the angel, instead of answering the first angel, turns to me, Vayomer elai, Ad erev boker 2,300 v'nitzdak kodesh. So either I heard the answer or the angel actually told me the answer, because don't forget, this is Daniel controlling his dream. It's his thought, it's his brain. So he hears and he says, it will come, redemption will come in 2,300 evenings and mornings, whatever does that mean? Boker, erev boker, so I guess 2,300 days. But it could be Erev Avoker here. It could be also considered a year, right? That's also we don't understand exactly what that means. During which, the sacrifices will not be sacrificed in the Beit HaMikdash, and only in this 2,300 either days, years, weeks, months, or whatever, then we will find redemption, and the offerings, the sacrifice, the korbanot will come back. Seder HaAvodah. From this pasuk, many schools of thoughts were built on trying to decipher what this 2,300 number means. And nobody knows. As I mentioned to you earlier in one of the Gemarot that we saw, everybody's wrong. Even though they're trying to find it and they're trying to prove it, and the Kabbalah, the Gemara itself says we can't know. Daniel dreams it in a way where he also himself doesn't understand. But the answer is in 2,300 Erev Vavokers. That's when we are going to find a redemption, and that's where we're going to actually start sacrificing korbanot again here. So let's hope it's in our lifetime. Let's hope it's tomorrow, right? There's a famous Gemara that says every day we have to letzapot leYeshua. Every day. So much so that the Rambam says a mitzvah taseh. I think the Rambam says mitzvah taseh. This is being recorded, so I might be wrong. Okay. Either way, let's go on to the next pasuk. All of a sudden, pasuk tetvav. Vahi bir oti ani Daniel et hachazon. Right. I was trying to understand everything that I've seen here, because believe me, this vision is very weird. Rams and goats and horns and big horns and small horns and bashing and right and all of these angels. So he says, look, if I just heard an angel talk to me, why don't I just ask the angel my questions? I mean, he's right here, right in front of me. He's in my dream. Let me ask him. Va'avaksha bina, right? So I suddenly just asked the guy, the angel standing right next to me, right in front of me, V'hinei omed lenegdi kimare gever. This angel is standing right next to me. He looks like a human being. Let me just ask him. I don't understand what I'm saying. Maybe he'll tell me what I'm trying to see. Maybe this angel was put into my dream to explain the dream that I'm seeing. That's what he's basically saying. And va'eshma kol adam ben ulai. And then I heard a voice. call out to me next to this river called Ulai. And then, Vaikra Vayomar Gavriel Haven Lehalaz et Hamare. And the person, the angel that looked like a person that was standing next to me, yells out to another angel called Gavriel and says, Gavriel, please explain to Daniel what he just saw. That's what we're saying. So he comes. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayavo etzel omdi. Gavriel comes to where I was standing. Ubevo'o, when he came, niv'ati va'epela al panai. I was so terrified that I fell to the ground. Now, either it means he was terrified seeing Hamalach Gavriel, because who's Gavriel? Strong. Gavriel, right? That's one of the Malachim that also followed Yaakov Avinu according to the Midrash. So either he saw the mightiest of mightiest angels, and therefore he was scared, or there's something about his demeanor of what he was about to explain that made Daniel terrified. Okay, so the vision has to do with the end of the world. He says to him, "Vayomer Elai," the Malach Gavriel says to him, and now we understand why it was more of a demeanor that was frightening, because then he opens his mouth and he says, "Vayomer Elai, Haven ben Adam." Listen, understand. He's talking to Daniel. Listen, human. Haven ben Adam, ki le'et ketz hachazon. What you just saw, the vision that you saw of the goat ramming the ram, butting the ram, has to do with the end of the world. Ketz hayamin. Here too, our parshanim have a wonderful time trying to understand what this ketz hayamin means. Ubedabro mi pasuk yudchet. Ubedabro, while he was talking to me, nirdamti al panai arza. While he was talking, I fell to the ground unconscious. Vayigabi vayamideni amri. But he took hold of me and he raised me to my feet. He kind of like woke me up. So I guess it was a terrifying vision. And I think what the Ketuvim are trying to portray is that he actually saw the Malach Gavriel. Up until now, he just saw a Malach b'dmut Adam. He saw these horns, he didn't, but now, all of a sudden, twice, second time, he sees the Malach Gavriel and he falls down, he's shaking, because it must mean that he actually saw the Malach Gavriel in his dream. So, it's not the kind of an nevuah that has to do with musar, with convincing the people that they have to behave. It's a different kind of nevuah. And that goes back to our introduction, that Daniel is not a regular navi. He's not a navi that reprimands. He's not a navi that goes in and tries to fix and try to mitaken the world, trying to bring Am Yisrael back on track of their emunah. This is a different kind of a navi. It's a navi that just tells us what the future is all about by deciphering dreams and through his own dreams. And in this dream, he actually, it seems to me, I might be wrong, but it seems to me the emphasis is that each time he hears this Malach Gavriel speaking to him, he falls down, he's unconscious. He can't stand because he actually sees the Malach, which I think is the way the Ketuvim are trying to tell us this is real. It's not just a dream the way we dream today. Our dreams basically are not even, it's not a nevuah. We dream, we try to decipher what's going on in our lives, things that we've seen, you're on the bus, you're on it, right? But I think this is trying to tell us it's not that kind of a dream. It's an actual real dream that has a chelik of a nevuah in it. And therefore we should pay attention to the following. Pasuk Yutet 19. This is what he said. Vayomer, Hineni modi'acha et asher hiyeh be'acharit haza'am ki lemoed ketz. And he said to me, I'm going to show you what the results, what's going to happen because of God's anger of everything that happened until now, of this last horn, this last king, this last Antiochus that basically went against me and even took down some of my stars. The vision refers to the end of times, which, because of this pasuk, later on, as we're going to see in the next couple of pasukim, we are talking about Antiochus, possibly Bet Talmai, which with the Greeks come afterwards. But it's maybe just an analogy to another set of rulers, another set of empires that we might be living through today as well, because it's Ketz Hayamin. We know we're Ma'aminim B'nei Ma'aminim, and therefore Sefer Daniel was chosen to be a Sefer that was codified within our Tanakh, which means that it has merit, which means it's true. So if he's only talking about Ketz Hayamin that ends during Antiochus, well, we still live here today. So therefore, there has to be a way we can take this, adapt it, and copy and paste to our own days. And I think it's possible. Unfortunately, it's probably going to have to wait until next week. But let's continue. Pasuk Kaf. He explains to them, Ha'ayin asher ra'ita, ba'al ha'karnaim, malchei madai u'paras. He says it outright, just like I showed you. That's where I got it from the Psukim, like I mentioned. Right? He says to you, the ram that you saw represents two kingdoms, Madai and Paras. Ve'atzafir ha'sa'ir, melech Yavan. And that goat represents the kingdom of Greece. Ve'akeren ha'gdola asher ben einav hu ha'melech harishon. And that prominent horn that we saw in between the eyes, that's the first king. Okay, that's Alexander Hagadol. Ve'anishberet, and then when it broke, when that one broke, that means Alexander Mokdon, Alexander the Great broke, he died. Ve'ta'amodna arba tachtea, the first king, Alexander the Great died. His horn was broken, represents, and then these four kingdoms took his place, into which that nation, the Greek nation, will be divided, and there will be four strong empires from it. Arba malchuyot migo ya'amodna velo bekocho. Right? But there's going to be one that's super strong. That's the Salukim that we know later on to be Antiochus. Ubeachrit malchutam, and when the end of these kingdoms, of these four kings, are near, and they've become so wicked, kehatem haposhrim, when they're so wicked, ya'amod melech az panim, right? And all of a sudden, there will be a vicious one, umevin chidot, a vicious king. That was that one horn that grew from one of those, from that one of the four horns. That's Antiochus. Ve'atzam kocho, he will grow very strong. Velo bekocho, ve'niflaot yashchit ve'hitzliach ve'asa. He'll succeed not because of his own power, but because God is enabling it. He will cause terrible destruction. He'll be successful. He will bring destruction of powerful men to God's people, right? To Am Kedoshim. Ve'shchit atzumim ve'am kedoshim. That's us. Mechet Kohanim ve'goy kadosh. Am Kedoshim is us, meaning he will ruin us. That's exactly what happened with Yavan. Unlike Purim, and Hanukkah, they tried to ruin everything we believed in. It wasn't anti-Semitism similar to Haman. It was a different type. It was to eradicate everything our emunah, our faith in God. That's that long horn that tried to fight God in the heavens. That was the philosophy. That was Aristotle. Alexander the Great himself was a Talmid of Aristotle. So this mighty king, which is Antiochus, according to many Parshanim, will grow so strong. Ve'al sichlo ve'itzliach mirma biyado, that's pasuk kaf hey, ubilvavo yagdil ubeshalva yashchit rabim. Such rishut, he will grow strong because he's cunning. He will succeed. He will be deceitful. Mirma biyado ubilvavo, deceitful, proud of himself. He will destroy so many without even giving them a warning, and he will do it so easily. Beshalva yashchit rabim. His wickedness comes easy. He doesn't care about humans. Ve'al sar sarim ya'amod right? I think the Al-Sar Sarim Yamod, he will destroy everyone, and he will even destroy Sar Sarim, the angel of angels, maybe even Gabriel, that we met in the beginning of his dream. He is so powerful because he created mityavnim. That's powerful, using our own against us, which is happening today also. Very, very sad. But ube'efes yad yishaver. But he will eventually be destroyed. Antiochus will be destroyed without the use of any human power. Meaning, be'efes yad. We might, teva, nature, we won't destroy him. He will be destroyed by God. That's what the Malach is telling Daniel. ומראה הערב, פסוק כ"ו, ומראה הערב והבוקר, אשר נאמר אמת הוא, right? This vision that he saw about the 2,300, right? About evening and morning, when the sacrifices, which you understood in your dream to be, ruined, ve'ata stom hechazon ki liyamim rabim. It will stay that way for many, many years, 2,300 somethings, right? But he says to him, keep it secret. Stom hechazon. Keep it secret. Don't tell anybody. Which makes me believe that Daniel himself understood. He knew when Ketz Hayamin is. He knew when it's going to happen. But he's commanded by the Malach not to tell us, not to write it down in this book. So he doesn't. He doesn't tell us when. But it's there. Maybe he's trying to hint it to us. And that's why the Anshe Kabbalah are trying to decipher what that 2,300 number means. Either way, he keeps it secret, because that's what he was commanded. Right? Stom hechazon ki liyamim rabim, because it's not going to come for many, many, many years. Ve'ani Daniel, pasuk kaf-zayin, the last pasuk of the perek, ve'ani Daniel nihiyeti ve'nichleti yamim ve'akum ve'eset melechet hamelech ve'eshtomem al hamar'eh ve'ein meivim. I was depressed from what I saw. I became ill for several days. Then I finally got up. I went back to my work to, helping the king as I was assigned to, but I was puzzled by this vision, and I could not really understand it. So we see here, someone's dream, Daniel's dream, who he can decipher some of it, but not all of it. So if there's anybody here who might want to help out and try to figure out what's going on here, by all means.
When it was time for Yaakov to tell the Ketz Hayamim, and then in the end he didn't, and it wasn't going to be good for them. That happened at Yaakov Avinu.
Yeah. So, but there it says that God Himself took it away from him.
Right.
Right. Rashi says that God. Yeah, God took it away from him. He wanted to, but God didn't allow it to happen.
But is this Gabriel talking to him this whole time? And it is a dream.
Gabriel. Yeah.
Reality.
Yeah, Gabriel. So, what do we take from this perek? It's like I said before, like I started out saying, it's a very difficult perek. Again, any perek, any time we're trying to decipher someone else's dream is already difficult, especially when we're not talking to the guy. He's just writing down what he saw, and many times what you see, what you write down afterwards, it is exactly what you saw. So, we have to take it with a grain of salt. He's telling us that he probably saw more than he was able to remember, right? The question is, why is God doing this? The question is, and I don't have the answer for this, why is God telling us that he told a human being, he told Daniel what's going to happen? So the only answer I can get to, and to me it's enough, I don't know if it's enough for you, is that God is saying there is a plan. There is a plan. You don't know the plan, but there is a plan. It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Nothing you do won't change the plan. Because even if you see the mightiest of mighties, succeeding, because that's what he says. He was succeeding. He says here, Hitzliach ve'asa hishchit. Even though you see that, no, there's going to be justice. It's going to happen. And that's where emunat tzimima comes out. So at the end of the day, I remember something that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote. He was asked in one of those podcasts, one of those YouTubes. You could look it online. I don't remember which one it was. I got it to my WhatsApp one day. Somebody asked Rabbi Sachs. He said, "How is it? Why? What does it mean? Tzadik v'ra lo, rasha v'tov lo." It's very famous. You might have gotten it. Why? I don't understand. Why does God work that way? It's not fair. Why is it that a rasha has a good time in this world, successful, wealthy, he's not sick, he succeeds? And why does the righteous, those who follow, why? Lama ra lahem? And the answer that he gives, I don't know if you like his answer, if you agree with his answer, but his answer is because tzaddik v'ra forces the tzaddik to fight injustice. If it was tzaddik v'tov lo, he wouldn't fight justice. He wouldn't fight injustice because he's okay. He's tov. So when a tzaddik sees rishut, even though he might not win, he'll fight it. He'll fight it. And I think what I understand from this perek is that that's really what's left for us, is just to continue living our lives as religious Jews, knowing there's a plan out there, but still doing everything we can to fight injustices, to fight rishut, to try to win. It doesn't mean we're going to win. It could be that they're going to win. But God is saying that's okay, because in the greater scheme of things, I already told an individual called Daniel, and I even showed him. He might not remember. That's why he became sick. He doesn't, but I showed him there is an end. It's a good end, a good ending, one that's good for Am Yisrael. Your job is to continue to fight those injustices and represent me in this world. I think that's the koach. I think that's the otzma of this perek. That's what I get out of it. So anyway, interesting, definitely. Deciphering dreams in general are interesting. Who knows? Maybe one day one of you will have a dream, and somebody, maybe Gavriel, Hamalach Gavriel, or one of the other ones will tell you what the end is. Be'ezrat Hashem. Shavua Tov.